ladies, gentlemen, would like to kick this off on a creative note and have you perform a mental exercise. So we ask everybody, and I mean everybody, and the ones in the back, to imagine a one-of-a-kind positive experience that happened to you recently. Ready? Now close your eyes. Come on, don't be shy. Go. Okay. Now we'll give it a try and guess that you had the recession in mind. No. Well, it's worse than we feared. You see, we regard the recession as the single most important opportunity of our decade. The kind that allows us to change things for the better. What we need to do is to invest. Invest in education, invest in infrastructure, invest in jobs, in better ideas. After all, everybody knows that investing money in things like education is that we get better ideas, better people, smarter people, and a more balanced society. Or does it?
Okay, so let's look at the statistics. On a graph here, you can see the relationship between investment into education and its return rate. We picked economically few very different countries to show their response to the matter. We can see that Russia and India, for example, are doing a good job. Investment into education really contributes innovation, job creation, and wealth of the whole society. Ukraine and China are not doing that bad job either, but countries like Japan and USA are just putting a lot of money to education, and the return lags way behind. Schools simply don't create people that the economy needs. We can see here that the more advanced the economy, the less return. But why is it like that, Gleb?
Well, you see, it's like pouring water in a glass that's already full. It just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's right. Education system in USA, for example, does produce plenty of skillful individuals, but fails to create value. Unemployment rates, especially among young graduates, are especially high. The ones who fail to get a job are going abroad in a hope for a better future and have a job there, are going to work in a different field, which probably pays less, are going to continue their studies further, or are just staying unemployed. So, instead of trying to recover the economy and the education system by putting more money in, let's take a new challenge and restructure the system. So, how do we do it? Mart?
Well, let's look at the education system that we have right now. Did you know that the current system was actually created during the times of Industrial Revolution? So back then, economy relied on big factories, right? And what do factories need? They need a lot of people with a sufficient amount of knowledge to run the processes. So knowledge, indeed, is what the current education system, or the temple of education, is based upon. But the question is knowledge enough to be successful nowadays? Well, that was exactly the same question that Dr. Lewis Thurman asked. He did a major study. He actually took like a huge amount of people, 250,000, tested their IQs. He then picked the top 1% with the highest ones and pretty much followed them around to see how they're doing in life. Now, these are people with IQs higher than Einstein, so you would think that they would be the star politicians, business leaders, Nobel Prize winners. Well, the shocking results from the study, though, is that nothing like this ever happened. They ended up being just regular working people, just like you and me. So, so you see, like knowledge alone is not enough to create value nowadays anymore. So the question becomes, what should we actually add to the education system so that it would actually create value in today's society?
And this is where the art of creativity comes in. Essentially, creativity boils down to three things: nonconformity, curiosity, and ability to take risks. But what do they actually mean, and why are they so important? Well, let me tell you a story. A story about a young man who just graduated from high school. His working class parents have saved up just enough money for him to go to a really good college. And so he did. Unfortunately, as naive as he was, he chose a college almost as expensive as Harvard. So just 6 months into his studies, he displayed an extreme act of nonconformity. He dropped out. Yet a funny thing happened. He started feeding his curiosity and started taking classes in calligraphy and many others that actually interested him. Well, it was not all rosy. He had no home, sleeping on the floors of his friends, and having no general idea where he was going in life. It was only 10 years later that he incorporated his calligraphy knowledge into what was to become the first computer with beautiful typography. This computer was a Mac, and this man was Steve Jobs. So you're probably thinking, this is a great success story, isn't it? But what does this actually mean for the classroom? Now, we discussed that creativity boils down to 3 things. So let's take nonconformity. And I'll take an example from back in the day of elementary school. What is the half of 8?
3.
Well, let's assume that, oh, it's 4. Mart.
Well, it actually can be 3.
You're correct. And slightly spoiler surprise.
0.
Tery?
0.
That's correct again. You see, a person for tradition, for nonconformity, like you, has an ability to come up with countless answers to the same question. And this is exactly what the schooling system has to change. We have to stop teaching that there's only one right answer to every single question. Well, let's take curiosity. The toy train behind me once inspired a young boy to pursue a career in mechanical engineering. But why did this happen? Well, there's a theory that says that we people have a need to fill in the gaps in our knowledge. But those gaps are only exposed if we get at least a glimpse of the big picture. Now, imagine a physics class, that actually raises as much curiosity as a toy train for the boy. For this, we need teachers who actually tell stories how their subject can be applied to solve real-life problems. But let's take risk-taking. And I'm going to ask you again. How many of you think they can sing? Come on, don't be shy. Well, I guess that's not too bad. Well, if I ask the same question from a group of elementary school students, I guarantee you that almost all of them will raise their hand. And this is something the school system has to really change. The value it gives of humility is great, but we have to start taking risks and experiment. And this is exactly the 3 things that have to be added for us to create great things.
Okay, so we have a pillar of knowledge and pillar of creativity. What else do we need?
Well, I actually have an idea. Here's another thing that has changed since the times of Industrial Revolution. You see, back then, typical person had like 2 pairs of pants, pair of shoes, that was it. Well, nowadays, like, we have supermarkets full of stuff. That's actually Terry shopping with her sisters here. Anyways, but how has this changed the way we create value in economy? Well, back in the days, it used to be enough that the company designed the product and manufactured it. But now companies have to work really hard that people would actually notice their products, so you have to sell your stuff. So that's actually the third pillar in the temple of education. It's the business skills. Okay, now I know that you're saying that, well, but we already have all these business schools and they're creating really good people. Well, we think that we can do better, so let's break it down. Teaching business skills pretty much comes down to two things: proper mentoring and sales practice. Let's take mentoring. That's John D. Rockefeller, the richest man in human history. He was once asked, what is the secret of success? What would you recommend to a young student or a businessman who's just starting off in business, wants to get to the top of his field? So kind of thought about it, said, you know, I would find the best of the field right now. I would follow him for a year or so and then do exactly what he's doing. And in 5 years, I would be the top of the field. Now, why didn't he say anything about going to a prestigious business school or getting a 5-year degree? Well, because being successful in real life business, it's a lot about your attitude, your belief, your discipline, and these are not the things that you can teach in classroom. So we need more mentoring, less sitting in class and taking notes. Sales. If you think about successful entrepreneurs, like what's the one thing that they usually have in common? Business degree? Well, usually it's more like they started selling stuff early on in their life. Think about the expression from a paper boy to a millionaire. It's almost like a synonym of a successful entrepreneur. So yeah, if you're running a business, you know, it's really, really important that you know how to optimize lean production processes and position your products in changing markets. But essentially how you create value is that pick up the phone, set up a meeting, go there, close the deal. But right now we have like the MBA students graduating without even doing sales calls. So teaching business, first you have to have proper mentoring, second more sales practice in a curriculum. But let's go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay, so what do we learn from all this and what should we do? Okay, first of all, we have to realize that recession is a great opportunity to reform. Accept that current education system does not work properly. Create more people with value and stop relying only on the pillar of knowledge. The temple of education should instead be supported also by the pillars of creativity and the pillar of business. So instead of trying to recover the current education system by only putting money in, let's take a new challenge and restructure the system. Thank you very much.
Thank you.